Am I
Hi,
there?
Christopher.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you. I cannot see you.
Oh, you can. Okay, what do I do now? I'm not very good at start video.
Yes,
There,
perfect. Perfect.
there
That's
you
great. Yes. So, my first question, can you please introduce yourself? Tell me about your life, your career, how you started working for Time, life, all of those things.
Okay. Well, I'm 71 years old, and I started when I was a child. It was a childhood hobby. When I was in grade school in Manhattan, I had a after-school job at the Carlisle bookshop. I used to have to walk Jojo, Miss Crystal's dog, who owned the bookshop. And I would immediately take Jojo up to 67th Street to the firehouse and the police station where I had befriended the cops and the firemen. And if they got a call, they wouldn't take me with them, but if it was close enough, they'd tell me where it was. And so I would run off down the street dragging this poor dachshund, Jojo, with my camera so I could take my early news photos. And I was, you know, 9 years old or something. And I've been doing it ever since. And then when I got to college, I was at a, I was lucky enough to go to Yale. And when I was there, it was between 67 and 71. And the campus was just a news factory. I mean, so much stuff was happening. It was during the Bobby Seale trial, the May Day demonstrations, um, co-ed happened in 1969. And I just was able to, I started, how I started was I would take some pictures and I'd get on my motorcycle and I'd drive to New York, and I had gotten a relationship with Newsweek, and they would not pay me, but they'd process my film. And if they wanted to buy something, they'd buy something, it was $50 or something. I don't know what it was. But after a bit, they started giving me assignments. And so I started working steadily um, for Newsweek. And in those days, I hate to tell you this, or your parents this, but my tuition was $4,000 a year, and so, so I was able to take my Newsweek money and start paying for college. So it was a really lucky thing. And then I left. When I graduated, I moved back to New York, where I'd grown up, and then I started getting other magazine work, and then specifically at Time. And I worked at Time and other magazines. I was always freelance. I had a contract with Time Life, but I always remained freelance. So I worked for tons of different magazines. I mean, I don't know. I just had an incredibly lucky career. I have done thousands of assignments. I've been all over the world, 77 countries I've been up to, and 50 states, and just a lot of wonderful assignments, getting to meet incredible people and, heady stuff. But I mean, tell me to shut up if I start bragging, but it's pretty fun to march into the Oval Office and be greeted by name. And it's pretty fun to go on Air Force One. And, it's pretty fun to meet kings and queens. I mean, I've really been incredibly lucky. Now I'm retired. I think I got out of the business just at the right moment, because the business of my business really changed, as you know as well as anybody. And I'm so glad I am not 19 years old saying I want to be a freelance photographer today. But you get, I don't know. I had a picture run on the NBC Evening News the other day, and well, 6 months ago or something. I can't even remember who it was. Somebody who died, probably. Most of my people are dying. And, I got a check for $18.50. And I would say less than 10 years ago, that would have been $1,500, $2,000. I mean, the devaluation of photography. And, if I sound bitter, I'm not. I really am not. I had a wonderful, wonderful time. I just feel so lucky. On to
I
you.
actually, I wanted to get into that as you're talking about, photographing kings and queens and all of these things. Can you talk a little bit about how, like, what was your method? How was your your method of, creating these interactions with people and meeting people? How did that affect like who you were able to meet, who you were able to gain access to? And can you talk about like maybe some of the most memorable experiences from that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I always considered myself a photojournalist, and I wasn't, I never went out to sugarcoat my pictures of people. And in fact, the more real, the better. But I also understood that, that uh, befriend is the wrong word, but I needed to establish a rapport. I was interested the other day. I saw some ad for an Annie Leibovitz um, online classes she's doing or something, and one of the things she said is, it wasn't my job to be nice to the people I photographed. I'm not interested in whether they like me or not. Well, I disagree completely. I would have to say that um, wouldn't. I never aspired to become friends with people, but I wanted to get beyond, the whatever the stiff smile of the occasion was. There's one of the things that I had. I think I can read this to you. It's sort of nice. Um, Give me one sec. I'm just going to go down to. So there's something in am I blocking? No. In People magazine where I worked there, and it's called the Publisher's Letter, and it's a good honor to get. And it's when at the beginning of the magazine they write about one of the contributors or something. And my longtime picture editor was called MC Martin, and the opener of this, it just reads, People picture editor MC Martin knew what she was doing when she selected Christopher Little, 40 years old, to photograph President Bush. He and Bush really hit it off, she says. The thing about Christopher is he gets along well with everybody, but it is especially nice when he hits it off with the man who is now the 41st president of the United States. And I don't know, I became friends with Bush's photographer, who was a wonderful photographer called Dave Valdez, who was his White House photographer. And Dave said to me after a while, he said, I don't get it. I don't get why he gives you so much access. And I don't really either, but cool stuff happened. I was up in Kennebunkport, and he said, hey, let's go fishing. Let's go out in the boat. And I was in another room. He came and got me, and I went out in this, jet ski boat, whatever, jet boat thing. Just incredible intimacies of opportunity that now I do sound like I'm bragging. This is hard to do,
No, you're doing amazing.
All right, I'll tell
so
you.
funny.
Can I read you the other stuff, the other part of this piece? It's very short.
Yes,
But
please.
it's funny. Oh, I think it's funny. Bush was wearing a gray suit for the occasion, and Little suggested it was a bit too formal. So Bush invited Little into the bedroom to check out his clothes. As we walked into the room, says Little, Mrs. Bush was literally buttoning her last button. She said, George, I think this is a little bit of an intrusion. But when Bush said, Barbara, you remember Christopher Little, Mrs. Bush was the soul of graciousness as the two men headed to the closet. The vice president, he was then vice president, undid his belt and his trousers were down on the floor, Little recalls. At that very moment, an aide stuck her head in the door and said, oh my God, People magazine is in the vice president's closet and he's in his underpants. And then the next paragraph says, but whether our new president wears boxers or briefs is a secret that's safe with Little.
Wow, I feel like that pretty much sums it up. And Karen was telling us too, you were just so disarmingly nice that people.
Well, I tried to be, and I don't feel any. I feel like was a good way for me to operate. But I don't. It's not like I collected famous friends either. I kept my life very separate.
So I asked you to grab, some of the maybe most memorable photos or ephemera. I didn't know if you wanted to, maybe you can share your screen, or if you have physical copies that we can
No,
also.
I just pulled some stuff. It's sort of random,
That's
and
fine.
I can just put it up on share screen. So I have one of the clients I had for many years was actually 15 years was Dave Letterman, who is not an easy guy to photograph, and he sure hated the process. But for some reason, we connected, and he um, hired me exclusively to do his pictures for 15 years. So I at last count over 300 magazine covers of Letterman. That's of one person. That's really amazing. Anyway, I did it for different people and stuff. One of my favorite bits was getting this billboard on the West Side Highway in New York. That was really fun. Anyway, this is the letter I got. This is my ephemera section. It says, if you could read it, Dear Chris, for my money, pound for pound, the best picture ever. Thanks again, Dave. Well, the funny part is, well, you can see it's 30, what is it? 20, 30, 30 plus years ago. I can't even remember what the picture was, but I thought that was kind of a nice gesture that somebody would take the trouble to do that. And I don't know, this is the kind of picture that I love doing these stories. This is, of course, Oprah Winfrey in her limousine in Chicago, getting ready to have, you can see her chauffeur's hand reaching in to help her out. She was so cool, is such a cool person. And we were back at her studio where she was taping the show. I'm backstage, and I said, in the course of conversation, I said, this is my wedding anniversary today. And she said, shame on you, you pig. How could you leave your wife on your wedding anniversary? That is the worst thing I've ever heard. I no longer like you anymore. That's a good thing. And so we all had a good laugh at that. And then I got back to my hotel, and Betsy, there was like messages from my wife, Betsy, and she said, you got to call. And she said, I just received a bouquet of flowers the size of a room. And this was, done but remotely, but it said, Dear Betsy, thank you for sharing your husband with me on your wedding anniversary. Love, Oprah. That classy? Pretty cool, huh?
That's amazing.
Yeah. One of my better known photos was this. This, for some reason, it's a very bad reproduction of it. Was this? This was the end of the 1992 campaign, and it was about 3 a.m, and if you cover campaigns, which I did a lot of, you quickly learn that if the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And so I've been complaining to the traveling press secretary for days that I had gotten no private time with the candidates, and she said, I'll do something, don't worry about it. Anyway, so we're driving back to Washington. This was the last night of the campaign after they were certain that they had won, and won big, or were going to win big. And I was on the press bus, and the buses stopped, and she came and woke me up. I was, like everybody else, fast asleep. It was like, a day that had lasted from 6 a.m. till 2 a.m. And she said, come on. And so I got up and I got on the bus, and there they were, just high as kites. I mean, they weren't stoned or drunk or anything. They were just totally in, having a complete ball. And so I decided I wanted to get them to sign it. And in the meantime, I had done a picture of Hillary, which was a portrait I did on her 50th birthday. It was in Chicago. And she really liked it. And so I sent her some pictures. And then and then I asked, and I sent a copy of the bus photo, which really has been published a lot, and asked her to get it all signed for me. And I know for a fact, because of FedEx, that the bus photo arrived the exact same day that the Monica Lewinsky story broke. So I don't know if your viewers will remember Monica Lewinsky, but I could just tell quickly that she was an intern who got herself and the president into a lot of trouble. And anyway, so 6 months passed, and I thought, well, I'm never seeing that picture again. Not that I didn't have another print or something. And then it arrived, and I was in the Bahamas, and the White House operator it was just like on television, found me, I don't know how, at this little rental house in the middle of nowhere, and said, "Oh, Mrs. Clinton wants to speak to you." She just was so sad that it took her so long to get everybody to sign the picture. And actually, you can't see it here because I melded it together, but it came back smudged and torn. So I don't know what the history of the thing was. This was my a cover I did of Mrs. Bush and Millie, who is her famous dog. And I also sent her a picture, and this is also a good reason to note that not picture editors do not always make the right decision, in my opinion. Of course, I have to live with it. But anyway, so she said, "Great picture, thanks, Barbara Bush and paw print Millie." And I thought, well, that's very nice, and went up on my office wall. And then the next time I was doing them stuff, she greeted me and she said, "I meant it when I said I liked the picture, but couldn't you have ironed my face?" So sweet. She was a charming and very, I say tough in a nice way. She knew what she wanted, and she was staunchly defended her husband. I went through whatever happened, but and then the other thing that's so much fun is you get to photograph these incredible people, and they're so beautiful. Anyway, this is Isabella Rossolini, who is the daughter of Ingrid Bergman, of, I'm sure you remember, Casablanca fame and many other films. And Isabella had a great career of her own. And some Swedish people saw this picture, and they bought it, and they made a Hasselblad poster out of it, which says, "Christopher Little used a Hasselblad to shoot Isabella Rossolini." And I was very proud of that, I have to say. Johnny Cash, I arrived down in Tennessee, and he was late for some reason. This was toward the end of his life, and he was kind of ailing. He had an assistant sort of helping him around, and I arrived there, and they put me in the Johnny Cash Museum. I wasn't sure whether I was supposed to go to the gift shop and buy stuff or not. But anyway, and then they took me on a tour of his house, the most salient and memorable feature of which was that he and June Carter Cash's bedroom is the living room. So the biggest room in the house has a giant 4-poster bed in the middle of the living room. Anyway, Johnny finally arrived and said, "Oh, let's get out of here. I have my secret cabin in the woods, and I'm going to take you to it. And believe it or not, I don't take many people there." And so he took me out there, and we did some pictures. And he said, "What do you want me to sing?" And I said, oh God, said, oh, you know, was groan. Um, is Ring of Fire okay? He said, that's my favorite song too. He also told me that he didn't write it. June Carter Cash and another guy wrote Ring of Fire, which I had never known. Anyway, so he belted out Ring of Fire. I mean, I just thought I was in heaven. I just thought I had died and gone to heaven. Just such a pleasure. Um, anyway, we did a little fishing and did a little this and that. And then about 10 or 15 years later, I met Roseanne Cash, his daughter, and she had played in a concert, and I managed to talk to her afterwards. I introduced myself, and I told her this story, and she burst into tears. And I said, "What have I said? I don't understand." She said, "He never took me to that cabin. None of us was ever allowed to go to that cabin. How did you get to go to that cabin?" And I said, "I have no idea. It was complete. I had no idea it meant anything other than it was a cool place to go take pictures." And she said, "Oh, well, this is very special." So of course I had to send her a bunch of pictures from the cabin to shoot.
Yeah.
Now, you know, Katherine Hepburn, it's like, you know, I don't know. At my age, 71 years old, she was like the sort of one of the dominant star figures in my entire life. And what a privilege to spend time with her. And see how what an intense and incredibly creative person. Big fan of hers. That's the other thing. You got to be really careful. You know, I hope I don't sound manipulative when I say this, but dealing with these people, it's not dissimilar than you know, when you first approach somebody my granddaughter's age. You know, you can't blow it. There's sort of a pattern that takes place, and I just saw it happen so many times. So I learned my lesson early on. And if you approach a person like Katherine Hepburn and you are, you know, awestruck and telling her what a great performer she is and how brilliant she is and stuff, she'll turn on you right away. It's like almost a rule. But if you withhold, not really sounding manipulative, but you know, you're polite and you try to establish relationships, talk about other stuff and stuff. Then if down the road you forget to tell her how great a star she is, how brilliant an actress she is, you're in equally big trouble. Because at the end of the day, they do want to, you can't generalize that much, but you know what I'm saying. It's just, you just have to tread lightly and at the right time. You know, I would never lie to somebody about if I was a big fan, and I would never use that word actually either. But as an admirer, it's pretty easy to tell somebody like Katherine Hepburn after you've spent an hour or two together that, you know, you think she's as cool as everybody else does. Who else have I done? Weird people. This is Blondie. I just always enjoyed that idea. This was not a set up picture. This was their idea. They said, "Let's go down to the subway. I got an idea." And so there's Debbie Harry looking like herself. I don't know if anybody remembers the Judds, but you asked for some other ephemera stuff. Do you remember? Did you ever know them? They were country music, you know. I think they kind of fizzled out. Winona became more famous and stuff. But anyway, I went down to Tennessee and spent time with them. They were a lot of fun. And this is the letter I got from Naomi. "Hey, Chris, say hey, good looking. What you got cooking?" That's me. "Thanks for contact sheets. As you can see, I love your stuff. Please send soon as you can. I'd like to use some in book. XO, Naomi, AKA Queen of Everything."
How and why do you believe your archive will benefit from being in an institution?
Ah, yikes. That's a hard question. I just think, I don't know. I mean, of course, it's only from my point of view, but it just seems too valuable to get lost to history. Not that, I'm the most earth-shattering photographer that ever lived. But, I mean, what's the alternative? It's so sort of sad. You die and your kids look at it, and what do? They say, well, we got to toss it, you know. I mean, I still sell pictures, but way fewer than obviously than I used to, because I'm not currently shooting. So I hope somebody would see the value and also in the breadth of the work. But maybe people only want to focus. I don't really know. I mean, that's why I'm talking to you guys rather than trying to cope with it myself. Because I don't really know what the conversations that need to be had are.
What kind of educational impact, for like young photographers like me, what kind of educational impact do you hope seeing your work in, an institution would have?
Well, I don't, maybe it would have the reverse impact, because I was lucky enough to really thrive as a generalist. And I'm not really sure that's possible today. In fact, I think I would never discourage anybody, but there are roots in photography now that on the commercial side, if money is, if you want to make your living doing it, is the one path. The other path is, although I don't know how you make a living, is to be a serious documentarian and concentrate and specialize. I mean, I as I told you, I've done a bunch of books. Even books and I've had some books that have sold very well, and even then, it's not a way to, well, certainly not a way to get rich. But it's not even a way to make a good living. And as I was starting to say, being a generalist, I think that would be almost impossible for somebody today. I mean, I think in a commercial way, if you're maybe pursue fashion or pursue advertising, those kinds of commercial subsets of photography. But in terms of photojournalism, I mean, maybe one of the fraction of precious spots at a major newspaper or a major magazine. I don't even know. I mean, Time magazine today is about 10 pages long. It's not, it just doesn't exist anymore. And in terms of making a living, promulgating your work on the web is just, you might as, I mean, if I Google, like, I was trying to, sometimes I have to Google somebody I photographed to get a bio on them, because I can't quite remember, when did they die, or when were they born, or whatever. I Google them and I see my pictures, by the thousands. I mean, they're robbed on a daily basis. I mean, I don't know how many pictures I have on Pinterest or whatever it's called. And you can't, I mean, there's nothing to be done about it. It used to freak me out. And I was like, come on, get real. If I mean, anybody can take them, and people don't even understand that it's robbing. So if you're a young person and you're trying to make your living at it, which I'm no longer trying to do, I'm lucky in that way. You're going to get. I mean, I don't want to be so discouraging, but maybe what you're doing is the pure and right way to go. And I don't even know if you make your living some other way. But a serious pursuit of concerned photography, as Cornell Cappy used to call it, is the way to go. I don't know. Good luck to you. But yeah, I mean, I think, well, I don't know. And as far as I'm concerned, what education means to be about photography is, in my case, going back pre-digital, is my dream is to look through people's contact sheets, and sheets of slides, and see what their thinking was and what happened in the process. And I mean, to me, you can tell. I mean, you can look at a contact sheet, and if you know if your assistant was good and they number the roles and kept everything in chronological order, you can see a relationship develop on the contact sheets. I mean, barring somebody who's really being mean to you. But I mean, assuming that people are being open, you can see it. It's very cool, and you can see. And to me, that's. I mean, my dream would which never happened because life doesn't really work that way. Would be to have gone from, follow invisibly photographers I admired and watch them work. The second best thing is to look at their pictures, but what a treat, even in a studio setting. It's kind of fun to see.
Kind of going off of that, just like my last official question, but what do you think, like with all the ephemera and work and little notes and contact sheets and things like that you've collected over the years, how do you think that adds to or strengthens your photographic work?
Well, I think greatly, in terms of any kind of study later on. As I've indicated earlier, not to you, but I don't really know, since it's a pretty daunting task for me to go through my files, which are many, 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 many file cabinets. And so I don't really know how much I had. Like that Letterman letter, I was looking for a Letterman picture for something else, and I came across that just yesterday. It was like, I had no recollection of it at all. So I don't know how much. Betsy, my wife, in those days didn't work, and she worked for me. Now she has her own career, but she was in charge of. She undertook to keep track of the stuff, and she saved a lot of stuff, which was great. But I don't really know the extent to that I have yet.
I mean, even just looking at, I started watching the David Letterman's My Next Guest Needs No Introduction on Netflix. And
Right.
That's how I know him, because I didn't watch the David Letterman show growing up. So to see the photos that you have of him as a young man, this is it's so weird.
Yeah. He was a lot of fun. My studio was at home. I mean, we had a loft in New York, and we lived at the studio. It was a large loft, and Letterman came there all the time, and he used to be so sweet with my daughter, the mother of the 6.5-year-old, 7-year-old, and he would always include her on all the shoots. And when he was getting made up, she would get made up. And then he was, when he used to smoke cigars, I think one of those covers had him, he would take the hard butt end of the cigar and lick it and put it on his forehead, and then turn to Eliza and just start chatting, see how she would react. But anyway, it was a lot of fun. It was a good. He was an amazing guy. He's a brilliant man.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, and good luck to you. You're gonna be a star. I know it. Okay.
Thanks so much.
How do I get out of here? What do I do now?
I'll end it for us both.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Bye-bye.